Thank you very much, councillors and members of senior staff, members of the gallery and the press and the clergy. Warm welcome to the February meeting of Temora Shire Council, and I declare the meeting open. And acknowledge that we do have Councillor McLaren. It is her birthday today, so to Councillor McLaren we extend many warm and happy returns for the day, and enjoy your meeting. What better way to spend it than with your council colleagues? So many happy returns. So this meeting is being recorded and will be placed on Temora Shire Council's webpage for public information. And we that are present here today are of course reminded that when we are speaking, that we agree that our view and our comments are being recorded and published, and also we're reminded that if and when we're speaking, that of course that we're respectful to others and we use the appropriate language. Temora Shire Council accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures during this council meeting. Thank you. Now let's go to our opening prayer, and that is in the hands of Pastor Darren Kupke from the Lutheran Church. We bid you a warm welcome to the chamber, Pastor Darren.
Thank you. Would you like me to use a microphone?
Please.
I want to start with a reading for Sunday, Luke 6, from verse 27. Jesus says, "But to you who are listening I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, and pray for those who mistreat you." What a weird saying, to love your enemies, and it probably needs to happen in marriages. Sometimes the people we hurt the most are the ones we love the most, and so marriages wouldn't last if we couldn't learn to love our enemies. And it probably applies to lots of other friendships, relationships, and also to our council and our community. So let us pray. Father God, we thank you for the love you give us, the love you have for us, the love you place in our hearts for others. Lord, sometimes we get mistreated. Sometimes we have people that we hate or hate us, and we're finding really difficult to love. And so, Lord, we pray for your love to be in our hearts, to overflow. We pray for marriages, for families, for friendships, for relationships in organisations in our Shire, that you would heal them and strengthen them and bring your peace. We pray for your protection, your guidance over this meeting today, in the name of Jesus and the power of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Pastor Darren, and please know that Council is deeply grateful to you and the members of the Temora Christian Leaders Group for your ongoing commitment to delivering our monthly prayer, and it's always very good medicine, and I can assure you there's lots of love and respect that dwell in this chamber, sometimes some robust discussion, but a lot of love and respect. So again, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to do this. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. You are welcome to stay, Pastor, or if you have to go, thank you. Councillors, apologies. We have one from the Director of Environmental Services, and great to see the Town Planner sitting in the chair while he's on annual leave. So is someone prepared to move, please, that apology is approved. No. Councillor Ronald, Councillor Oliver, moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. I declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Are there any declarations of any interest at this stage of the meeting, please? Councillor McLaren.
There is an item in the business paper that has an interest. I have an interest.
Thank you very much. No further declarations at this stage. Let us move on. We do not have any public presentations. Councillors, motion please to receive the minutes of the last general meeting of Temora Shire Council held on the 13th of January. Someone prepared to move that those minutes are confirmed as a true and correct record. Thank you, the Deputy Mayor. Councillor Oliver, thank you. Moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. And declare the motion carried. Thank you. We also have a further lot of minutes, councillors, to have adopted, and that is our extraordinary council meeting that was held on the 20th of January. Someone prepared to move the adoption of those minutes, please. Thank you, Councillor McLaren. Councillor Oliver, moved and seconded. I will put that to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. There's no mayoral minutes, so let's go on, councillors, to the business paper of your white pages, page 11. The minutes of the Youth Advisory Committee, and Councillor Bushell and I sit on that committee, and it was Councillor Bushell's first meeting of that committee, which was great. And you see the minutes there, councillors, and is someone prepared to move that Youth Advisory Committee report is received? Councillor Bushell has moved that, thank you. Seconder? Thank you, Councillor McLaren. Moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. For the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Anything that, Councillor Bushell, did you wish to highlight anything out of that report for council? No. Thank you. Councillors, it was just a very, very good meeting. The youth officer, of course, was there along with our Director of Administration and Finance. It just seems to be a lot of enthusiasm in this space that's continuing and ongoing, which is most infectious. So thank you. I go to Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a comment on 3.2, the mentors that helped in the Youth Made Markets. I just wondered whether they'd been written to by council to express our sincere appreciation for the time given up. Thank you.
Great point, Councillor McLaren. Actually, Councillor Bushell said exactly the same thing, and it is there in Business Without Notice on page 20. So yes, that's certainly covered, Councillor McLaren, and most important. So thank you. Councillor Reinhold.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think you'll find TBEG had a fair bit behind the scenes with the mentoring, and
okay,
you'll find a lot of members were mentors. So
excellent.
TBEG a plug.
Thank you. No, thanks, Councillor Reinhold. Very important. Actually, it might be something if the General Manager could note to ensure that we also add that to the list if council are happy for that. Thank you. Well, councillors, the Youth Advisory Committee report and its recommendations are there for your consideration. Is someone prepared to move the adoption of the report and the recommendations, please? Councillor Reinhold, thank you. You've moved that. Seconder for the motion, Councillor Bushell. Thank you. Moved and seconded. There's further discussion. So further discussion, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. For the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Thank you very much. And councillors, I was very, very pleased to have been in a hotly contested position of the chairmanship of the Youth Advisory Committee. I've never been the chairman of the of the Youth Advisory Committee, and yeah, certainly looking forward to that. And hopefully this time next year there'll be a new chairman, Councillor Bushell. Now, let's proceed to page 25, the Assets and Operations Committee report. And someone please move that the report is received. Deputy Mayor, thank you. Councillor Good, second the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. For the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Councillors, the report and its recommendations are there for your consideration. I note that the committee have recommended that the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair, is the chairman of that committee. So does the Deputy Mayor have anything he wishes to add in relation to the assets report?
No, not at this stage, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Well, councillors, the report is there for your... Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just on page 112 regarding the old Target building, it says, I missed it during the assets meeting, budget implications of $1,000. I don't believe that should be coming out of council's budget if this development application is approved. It should be borne by the developer, I think, because they want the rails moved. So that's what I feel. So thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Oliver. Does the General Manager have any comment in relation to that remark by Councillor Oliver?
Only to say, Mr Mayor, that that's a decision for council.
So therefore, if the recommendation, Councillor Oliver, gets up, that's on page 113, then when there's a report furnished from the Traffic Committee, then that's a matter for Council that could consider at the time. Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. That would form part of the DA application, I would imagine, too, so would it not? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You wanting to talk? All right, good, sorry. Thank you very much. Well, councillors, you have the Assets and Operations Committee report and its recommendations there. Is someone prepared to move their adoption or something to the contrary?
I think it's held over, but not the
What's wrong?
remember we held this over? Is that later on? You got that flag to be later on in the meeting?
No.
What happens there?
So, councillors, the engineer has raised in discussion on the motion that's before us that on page 27 that the committee resolved the council to hold over to the February council meeting in order to seek further clarification and further investigate debranching of the two trees. So, the engineer.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So I have done a bit of investigation in relation to this, and yes, there has been significant pruning of one tree at the front of this location, and it was definitely not authorised by council staff. The recommendation from the works manager and the manager of Parks and Gardens is that council sticks by their original resolution of removing the two centre trees and leaving the two outside trees, and that we, indicate or write to the landowner to indicate that they're not to touch the street trees. So yeah, happy to answer any questions.
So thank you, Mr. Engineer. So, can you just remind me, sorry, the recommendation that you're presenting to council is the removal of the two centre trees. Yeah. Okay.
And that we write to the landowner.
And that we write to the landowner and advise accordingly.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's in relation to report 3.2 on page 27. Is, the director and secretary captured that? Thank you. Now, I'll go to the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Good. Are you prepared to include that in the resolution in terms of you're adopting the reports received and further in relation to report 3.2, or did you want to deal with that? Because okay, so the Deputy Mayor? Okay. Thank you. The Director?
So you want that the council move the two cemeteries and right to the landowner and the remainder of the...
Yes, the remainder of the reports be adopted. So we've already moved that they've been received.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, should that
Councillor Good.
Should that be...
Councillor Good.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Irvine, can you just turn that off just for a quick thank you. Councillor Good.
Should that be resolved that in relation to report 3.2 that the council remove the two centre trees and the reports and recommendations as presented in relation to the rest of the resolutions be adopted?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Councillor Good. So we'll just get that. Now, so resolved that in relation to report 3.2, the council remove the two centre trees and write to the landowner and further that the remainder of the reports and recommendations as presented be adopted. Now, the Deputy Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think where it says right to the landholder, I think that should go a bit further, explaining that they're not allowed to prune trees.
You can put it in if you want, but
oh, well, as long as that's the intent.
As long as that's right, that's the intent, and if the motion gets adopted, go to Councillor Good.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just again, just a technical point, that where we say report 3.2 that council removed the 2 centre trees, we've already resolved that.
Or reiterate, do you want to...
Or do we...
reiterate the initial...
Or do we confirm?
Confirm the initial decision by... Yeah. So who's... I thought we'd moved, I thought the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Good moved the report.
Decision to remove, is that what you want to say?
Yeah, confirm the previous motion to remove.
So it's 10.
I thought we had a motion to...
Yeah, that's done.
Okay, so we have a resolution on the screen there that was resolved that in relation to report 3.2 and the Assets and Operations Committee report, that Council confirmed the previous motion to move the 2 centre trees and right to the landowner, and further that the remainder of the reports and recommendations as presented be adopted. Councillor Irvine.
The trees in question are London plane trees. Can we have an opportunity at the next meeting to discuss the suitability of these trees in a residential setting? Because in my opinion, they're not an appropriate residential street tree. They're far too big and far too aggressive and far too invasive. They drop considerable amounts of waste. On a note, in relation to that, we've got a situation at the town hall where we've got a London plane tree beside the town hall with that flat roof. We've already had a flooding issue there once. It gets to the point where in autumn, you're basically going to have a maintenance situation where every fortnight you've pretty much got to get up and check that gutter because the leaves are that big. And that's the same for every landholder and every resident. I don't believe council should be dictated to by the residents. And I certainly don't think just because someone moves in and doesn't like a tree, we should rip it out. However, I think we really should be mindful of the appropriateness of those particular trees in that location and just maybe just reserve our decision on this matter until we have a report on that appropriateness of those trees, because I think those trees are going to be a problem for us in the future as well, the ones that we leave behind, and they're just going to get bigger. So that's all I'd like to say.
Thanks very much, Councillor Irvine. I just wonder whether, because Council does have a policy document at the moment in relation to trees, just to wonder whether we deal with what's before us and that further, perhaps another motion that we could review. I'm not sure when the last time we reviewed that document, Mr Engineer.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. So, yeah, we do have a document, and it's not that old, but absolutely, I would note that out of the last community survey, that there was quite a, I would say, a major shift for residents requesting native trees, more of a selection of native trees, which each to their own. But yeah, I do think we look at the suitability, and I think the plane trees, I agree, they're very big, but there are a couple of different varieties that might be a bit smaller. But yeah, I'm not so sure about pulling, maybe progressively we can remove, but yeah, certainly where there is existing plantings, we haven't, at this point, we haven't, I guess, looked to remove. Because there are, streets like Victoria Street, there are a few streets where they are, they do exist. The only tree that council has currently got open season on is there's a long-standing resolution of council to remove their white cedar trees, and yeah, but certainly I have no issue. I do think we need to look at the native side of it. It was definitely a clear theme in the community survey, and yeah, happy to bring it back. When I say happy to bring it back, can't guarantee it'll be next council meeting, but yeah, in the short term.
Thank you, Mr Engineer. Well, I would have thought that when we deal with the motion that's before us, that Councillor Irvine might like to move that we have the review the document, because obviously that was considered by the last council, and now this new council can. So Councillor, sorry, I'll go back to you, Councillor Irvine, when I deal with this motion. Now, the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Good, I know you both moved the reports are received. sorry, of the assets. You're both happy to move the motion that's before us. Thank you. So the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Good has moved that in relation to Report 3.2 of the Assets and Operations Committee, the Council confirm the previous motion to remove the 2 centre trees and right to the landowner, and further that the remainder of the report and recommendations be, as presented, be adopted. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Irvine.
So is this you want
motion?
A motion. All right. The motion will be that we review the street tree policy with a view to including more natives and perhaps removing London plane trees.
So thank you. So Councillor, I'll take the motion just in relation to a future review of the street tree policy, and then that'll incorporate everything that you've articulated and more. So thank you very much for the motion. The seconder, thank you, Councillor Good. Moved. Seconded. Is there further discussion? Further discussion, I go to the engineer.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I guess just following on from that, the other tree that, you know, it's quite difficult to find good street trees, and I think, you know, it's pretty clear that the past Parks and Gardens manager, Chris Campbell, he the 2 that he found and sort of singled out 3 really were the Chinese elm, the pears, and crepe myrtles, and they were his go-to in the end. But you know, another tree that I would say we're having significant issues with, but I suspect council will be reluctant to deal with are the oh geez, I can't think of their names now. The ones that are down.
Chinese elm.
No, not the Chinese elm. The ones down in front of the pool here. Quite nice purpley leaves. Claret ash. Yeah. Claret ash. Really, really, really invasive roots, and yeah, quite messy as well. But yeah, we're having some issues. We've had claims against council. They're doing a lot of damage to roads, and yeah, it's another tree that we've got a lot of, and is beginning to cause us significant issues.
Thank you, Mr. Engineer. And as long as council are happy, because I know there is just a significant workload for councillors and for staff, particularly in the next few months. So as long as council are happy that at some stage during this year that we do that, and I think it's very timely. Councillor McLaren.
I just had a suggestion. Maybe we could have a little community committee of 3 or 4 people to investigate native tree options to recommend to the manager so that they can do the legwork and research. Some people who are really passionate about native trees might be worthwhile gathering information.
Well, thank you, Councillor McLaren. I'm sure the engineer will take that on board, and you just never know. You never know what knowledge is out there, so thank you. Councillors, let's move on to page 136, the Economic Development and Visitations Committee report. And you see that the minutes and the reports are contained therein. Note Councillor McLaren has been nominated as the chairman of that committee, and congratulations, Councillor McLaren, to you. And I'm very proud to have served as that chairman for many, many years, and it's great to see someone else that's enthusiastic and keen take the reins. Councillors, someone move, please, that the report be received. Councillor McLaren, thank you. Seconder for the motion, Councillor Reinhold. Moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Councillor McLaren, did you have anything you wish to highlight at all from your committee's deliberations?
Not really. There's 3 items. 2 of them deal with promotions of Temora through the various bodies, and the third one's relating to the bush bursary program. So it's as read.
Thank you very much. Comments, questions, councillors? If not, is someone prepared to move that council adopt the report and recommendations for the Economic Development and Visitations Committee report, please? Thank you, Councillor Irvine. Councillor McLaren. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, I will put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. I declare the motion carried. And thank you very much. And again, well done, Councillor McLaren. Now let's go over to page 164, the Aerodrome Users Committee report. And I note that Councillor Judd, again, has been elected as the chairman of that committee, very, very, very long-serving chairman of the Temora Users Committee, Councillor Judd, and I think Council know that it's a particular passion of yours, so congratulations on that appointment. Councillor Judd, do you wish to move?
I'll move the report be received.
Thank you.
Report be received.
Thank you, Councillor Judd. Second, Councillor Irvine. Moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Councillor Judd, did you have anything you wish to highlight, comment on?
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. Our engineering services management gave a report that work has finally started on runway 1836 after many delays because of the wet weather, and it's progressing. We then had a report from Grant Johnson from the Gliding Club, page 160, 169, and I draw your attention to the recent gliding thing in Temora. Brought in about over $90,000 in the spend of just a number of weeks. And please take note of the map on 169, and Grant made special mention just that Temora has a unique location as far as gliding as being that participants can go really long distances just because of the conditions in our area. So you see how far they've gone on that map there. So it's one of the advantages we can promote as being the home of gliding in Temora. And the last point in general business, and point 3, and as you realise, council is continue to debate about the future of our sale yards estate, and it was good to hear from Grant and the users that there is fairly good interest in the subdivision going ahead. So, and that's as a councillor we don't really know, but it's good to get to the people who are out there on the ground to get their feedback. So that was very pleasing to hear. That's all. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Thanks very much, Councillor Judd. Councillors, you've read the report and considered the recommendations. Is someone prepared to move that the Aerodrome Users Committee report and recommendations are adopted? Councillor Oliver, Councillor Judd moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, I will put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. And again, congratulations, Councillor Judd, on your re-election as chairman for who knows how many years, but many. Yeah, that's right. So thank you very much. Councillors, that is all the committee reports. So we now proceed over the page to 173 to delegates reports. Councillors, do we have any delegates reports, please? Councillor Oliver.
Pardon me. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, last Sunday I went out to the Springdale Progress Committee meeting, and they've got a problem, I think, like every other committee around the place because of COVID. They haven't been able to get off their backsides and earn any money because of the restrictions, and they've still got the same expenses. Electricity's running all the time and all that sort of thing, but their income is no good. So I'm just what they've decided they were going to do was write a letter to the General Manager and ask if there's any hardship grants or any COVID grants for these various committees that are around, and I'm sure there's other committees too and organisations that haven't been able to raise funds. So I'm not sure whether the General Manager's received that letter as yet, but they did intend to write. So that's all, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Oliver. Mr General Manager, have you in receipt of the letter from the Springdale Progress Association? No. Not as yet, no. Thank you. Thanks very much, Councillor Oliver. Further delegates' reports. Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I attended the TADVAC meeting last week as a delegate on Imagine Temora and the new Art Precinct Committee. They're very happy to be back in the old Scout Hall, back in their home, and they're business as usual with all the classes up and running and workshops planned. We had a further meeting this morning to discuss the resolution of council on the naming of the building, and there'll be further report on that in the future, but it was a very constructive meeting. They did raise at the end concern about the floor of the Scout Hall with the dance classes that have been running, so I just wondered whether we couldn't request the James Durham to perhaps do a condition report on particularly the floor and advise council on the suitability of it and any maintenance issues that might be appropriate for the budget estimates as well to do with that building. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor McLaren. Mr General Manager, that request would seem appropriate, and perhaps he's already has that underway, but...
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor McLaren. Look, and you mentioned about the meeting this morning with TADVAC, and I was pleased to also be present with the General Manager and Director of Administration and Finance, and certainly worthwhile to be able to be in attendance. I note that Councillor Reinhold was an apology due to work commitments, but yes, we'll certainly receive some further correspondence in relation to those matters in due course. Thank you. Let's go to the Deputy Mayor. Oh, did you mean to press it? Yes.
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. Yeah, the Lake Committee's had a couple of meetings in the last month, particularly organising the celebration for 40 years since the official opening of the lake, which will be on the 13th of March. You've got the members of the original members of the committee, or the ones that are still here around, and yeah, they have a big day on the day and full celebrations, have a few skiing demonstrations and so forth. So that's all look like it's coming ahead together quite well. So keep that in mind, the 13th of March. Also, we hosted the federal member and also Minister of Agriculture here a couple of weeks ago, Michael McCormack and David Littleproud, travelling through. So they called in and had spent a bit of time with Stuart Winky from BFB, and we took them out to one of the BFB's farms, which initially they were going to have a right on a header, but where the headers were, it was too wet to be harvesting, and this was only 2 weeks ago. So they got in a spray rig and did a few laps of a paddock with one of their contractors. So, but it was a good opportunity to talk to both of them about farming in the region, and Stuart Winky from a corporate perspective, I suppose, and myself just from a family farmer and what's happening. And while Michael McCormack was pretty aware of how our farming is operated in this area, I think David Littleproud was quite interested to hear what's happening, what sort of crops and livestock and so forth we're growing and so forth in the area. So I think it was a good couple of hours spent with them, and hopefully we'll see him back here in some time shortly. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr Deputy Mayor, and thanks for representing Council, that ministerial tour, visit. We appreciate your time in that regard, while some of us were indisposed. Thank you very much. Further delegates' reports? Councillor Reinhold.
Oh, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just quickly, the Women's Network Group. International Women's Day is coming up on the 8th of March, and we were going to have a showcase of art and different things around at the Art Centre, but we've postponed it now until things settle down around there and we can get organised. So it will be in May once it's officially opened, and just to showcase different artists around the town and our new fantastic centre.
Thanks very much, Councillor Reinhold, and yeah, a good prompt, a good plug that we just confirmed the date recently, I think, for Friday the 8th of April for the opening of the Temora Arts Centre, as it's currently named, and Council will consider that a little later. So yes, and Mr McCormack, our federal member, will be officially opening, which will be a lovely occasion, that's for sure. Council, just further delegates' reports. I have some notes. The Deputy Mayor and I attended a mayoral reception in Coolman Shire last Friday evening in honour of the long-serving former Mayor, Mr John Seymour. It was a very, very heartwarming occasion. It was held in the up-to-date store that Council owned, and by golly, it was a lovely, lovely occasion. The federal and state member, Riverina and Cootamundra, were there, coupled with mayors throughout the Riverina and general managers, and even former Mayor of Coolman, Mr Bob Menzies, that I'm sure Councillor Judd would remember fondly. He's now in a wheelchair, which just shocked us very much so, actually, just to see that. However, he was still smiling and was thrilled to be there. But Mr Seymour is a man that we deeply, deeply respect, and will continue to, pardon me, call on him for his counsel, that's for sure. Council, just to advise you that I have written on behalf of Council and the community to Her Most Gracious Majesty the Queen, Queen Elizabeth II, again on the Platinum Jubilee of Her Majesty. It's just an astounding, inspiring commitment of service to not just, of course, to England, but of course the Commonwealth of Nations that are so dear to her. So that is very important to acknowledge. Also, yesterday I had a Zoom meeting with all other mayors across New South Wales, and this was hosted by our Australian Local Government Association President Councillor Linda Scott and our new State President of LGNSW, Councillor Daria Turley of Broken Hill. The main thrust of it was expressing the concern to us about having the federal assistance grants from the federal government further reduced or even wiped out. Now, again, these were concerns expressed by both Councillor Scott and Councillor Turley. We must advocate for at least 1% with cost shifting from both state and federal governments and the increasing in overall cost for council, together with IPAS's disgraceful decision in relation to the maximum rate peg limit of 0.7%. It's making things extremely difficult for rural council to survive. As we understand it, there is currently no commitment from either of the major parties in relation to enhancing the federal assistance grants. I have requested an urgent meeting with a federal member for Riverina, for the General Manager and I to discuss that issue further, and there will be a mayoral minute on this specific issue that will be tabled at the March meeting of Council. So I know that previous councils have believed that this is a major issue, and it certainly is, particularly with a federal election looming. When we're currently receiving councillors 0.55% of total government revenue. I think it was over 1% years ago, was it? Used to be, and it's just diminished. And that's not to say we're obviously not grateful for the federal government's support with other various grants. However, these FAG grants are untied. So therefore that's up to the council of the day to determine what they wish to do with them, and it's crucial for the 500 plus local government areas that funding is increased. But more on that at the next meeting. The General Manager and I recently met with the Federal Member for Riverina, the State MP, the Murrumbidgee Local Health District Chief Executive Jill Ludford, the Frank Widmer Masonic Homes Chief Executive Mr Chris Manuelis, to discuss ways in which we leverage off each other to support each other in relation to the new hospital and Narrabri Lodge extensions. Council has given relevant information to Frank Widmer Masonic Homes, as has Murrumbidgee Health, to support their current grant application for the federal government's Building Better Regions Fund. So this will be their second attempt at that further, I think, $5.5 million dollars that they require. And there will be a subsequent meeting next week for us to follow that up, and further meetings will take place, and we need to keep the momentum going. There's a strong desire for all parties to work together. That's already proven to be the case, and that will continue to be the case. So we'll keep Council informed on those two important developments. The New South Wales Government released the review into all 13 joint organisations and the overall framework. Now, some of our new councillors may not be aware of joint organisations, but the current state government implemented them back in 2018 and believed that they could replace the ROCs. However, there's obviously been a major issue with the financial viability. And the Deputy Mayor, who sits on the board on behalf of Council, and I'm the independent chairman, we've been grappling with issues in relation to the JO for some time. The report, in my view, is extremely disappointing, and it just simply does not reflect, in my view, the major issue that the JOs have and that they advocate and share on a regular basis, that unless there is ongoing and recurrent funding, they will simply die. And we cannot be any clearer. I chaired a meeting at Parliament House 2 years ago where all of the chairmen were there. We all signed a unanimous, we all supported a motion that was to then Minister Hancock, that unless we receive recurrent funding, JOs will die a miserable death. And so they have known about this for some time. Even that meeting and that letter was not mentioned at all in the review, which I find amazing, because I mentioned it to the independent reviewers, as I know other chairmen did. So the Deputy Mayor and I and the General Manager will be attending the Riverina JO's annual general meeting next Friday week. And the board will obviously consider their position in principle and will advise member councils of their initial views. So I think at that time, Mr. General Manager, you'll be compiling a report and also a copy of that review document will be furnished at that time to council. But that's my restrained feelings. Councillor Judd.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Aside from the ongoing funding of the JOs, did the review actually say that the JOs were achieving anything?
Thank you, Councillor Judd. In response to that, what I would say, and I really do mean this sincerely, and I'm not sure if the Deputy Mayor might like to comment, or the General Manager, but the one thing that I think that there seems to be consistent positive reflections shared is the fact that the advocacy and lobbying aspect of the JOs has certainly enhanced, because obviously the ministers of the Crown have been told, you know, if JOs, chairman and CEOs want to meet, you clear the diary and make that happen. That's been a very obvious action from the government, which is appreciated, that's for sure, by the JOs. And there has been some positive projects as well. But again, in our case, those things were already happening within the ROC. So, the Deputy Mayor, did you have anything you wish to add?
Not really, Mr. Mayor, only to back up what you just said, and yeah, to say that the same thing could have been achieved through ROC. So, yeah, we're running two organisations side by side for no real reason.
Thank you very much. So, councillors, we will have a report that the General Manager will provide you for the March meeting in relation to joint organisations. And also next Friday, the REROC will also hold a general board meeting, so the General Manager and I will also be in attendance at that, and the Deputy Mayor if his diary permits. And of course, a reminder, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Judd, the General Manager and I will be representing Temora Shire at the Local Government Special Conference in Sydney from the 28th of February to 3rd of March. And it is a great opportunity to catch up with re-elected and newly elected mayors, deputy mayors and councillors from the 128 councils in New South Wales. And also be interesting to listen to the various debates on various motions with the new President, Councillor Daria Turley, to preside for the first occasion. We will have the Director of Administration and Finance and I will also be attending the executive meeting of the New South Wales Country Mayors Association in Sydney on Thursday the 10th of March, with the annual general meeting of the Country Mayors to be on the following day. So the Director will look forward to that, I'm sure, as much as I am. And reminder to Council and our community of the extremely busy period we're experiencing at Temora Shire Council. It is relentless currently with all that is going on within the chamber and without, and all councillors and staff are doing our very best. However, we ask all for their continued patience as we wade through the multitude of tasks at the moment. And of course, Council will be thrilled in conclusion with the grant that was announced of $518,000 given to Council for the amenities block upgrade at Bubble Ridge Park. I thank Councillor Oliver and Councillor Bushell that were able to attend that announcement with the State Member for Cootamundra, Steph Cook. And we must place on record thanks to Council for the advocacy and lobbying and also for our staff for their efforts, and particularly our grants officer, the town planner, Mrs. Golder. Thank you for your efforts. The member for Cootamundra specifically mentioned that on the day, and we also rang you to extend our thanks. So keep up the good work. But councillors, there's one thing that I think it is appropriate that I believe is urgent, and that is that we should write a simple thank you letter to Ms. Cook for the $518,000 grant. Because those two words, as we know, are very, very important. So, Councillor Bushell, you're happy to move that way. Councillor Good, moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. The contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much, councillors. Moving on from delegates' reports, let's go to page 174, which is the Mayor's report for January, and there's a recommendation, page 176, that the report be noted. Thank you, Councillor Oliver. The Deputy Mayor moved and seconded. Further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Over to page 177, staff reports. Motion receiving staff reports, please. Councillor Good, thank you. Seconder for the motion. Councillor McLaren, thank you. Moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. The contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Over to page 178, the General Manager's report, 10.1, calendar of events.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As read, councillors, just wanted to point out a couple of items to you. Next Thursday, Wednesday, the 23rd anyway, is the IPR workshop. That's at midday. It'll go. It's set initially 5 hours. It won't go for that long. It'll be about 3 to 3.5 hours.
Very grateful for.
Yeah. And the other one is on the 3rd of March is the opening of the outdoor reading room at the Temora Library. So with that, I'll someone wants to move that, accept that.
Thank you. So, Councillor Good, you moving the recommendation on page 178. Thank you. Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Reinhold, thank you. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. All those of that opinion, please say aye. The contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Over to page 179, 10.2, seals, the General Manager.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quiet month this month, but only one seal, and that's for the sale of part lot 21 on Airport Street.
Thank you. Councillor Good. move the recommendation. Thank you. Seconded Councillor Bushell. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? Is everyone clear? I'm just thinking for the new councillors. Is everyone clear on that particular issue, the part lot? Yes, you are. Other councillors, Councillor Bushell, Councillor. So the General Manager, are you able to, or the Director of Admin and Finance?
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of months ago, quite a few months ago, the owner that's right at the end of Airport Street there approached council asking if she could take ownership of a small triangle parcel of land that was, too small to be built on and probably wasn't being maintained very well. So she committed to maintaining it. So she's purchased that from us and will extend her yard to encompass that.
Thank you very much. Now, I will put the motion. I haven't put the motion, have I? So I will now put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Councillors, page 180, 10.3. Yes, there is another conference. General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, councillors, as you're aware, there's a conference next in a couple of weeks' time, and that's the 2021 conference. And then the 2022 conference it was deferred because of COVID, so the 2022 conference is bringing it back in line when it normally is, which is October. And they've asked that we provide our voting delegates and nominate attendees. Our current policy says the Mayor, Deputy Mayor, one other councillor and the General Manager.
Thank you very much, Mr. General Manager. So, councillors, the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor, happy? Thank you. Councillor Judd, you're happy to? Thank you. Mr. General Manager, are you happy to attend?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So, councillors, the Mayor, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Judd and the General Manager have offered to attend and represent Temora Shire Council at that conference in October. Is someone prepared to move that, or is there an alternate recommendation? Councillor Bushell, thank you. You'll move recommendation. Seconder for the motion. Councillor Reinhold, thank you. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, I'll put discussion. Councillor Judd.
I think even though council's got a policy, I think if any other councillor had a desire to go to conference, I think council would support it.
Thank you, Councillor Judd. That's it's just so unusual that we do have it in 1 year, but COVID's presented all sorts of challenges. So, so please make sure you speak up if, or keep that in mind at least for future years. So I'll put the motion to you, councillors. All those of that opinion, please.
Just before you do, Mr. Mayor,
discussion of General Manager.
Would you include in that the Mayor be the voting delegate?
Oh. Yeah, so the mover and second are happy to include Mayor's the voting delegate. Thank you. Moved and seconded. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Over to page 181, 10.4, the payment of fees and expenses, the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is another requirement that we have to review, the payment of fees and expenses and the provision of facilities for councillors. As you recall, I sent this out for councillors to ask if there were any changes. I had a few items come back, but generally speaking, I assume most people are reasonably happy with what's in the document. The changes that were suggested is the current policy doesn't allow for a councillor who holds, it sort of does, but it's silent on it, a councillor who holds a regional role to have their expenses covered whilst attending or representing council on those roles. The other one was we added an addendum in there for the personal accident insurance, which was just a change to the insurance policy. And the last one was an additional requirement, which said that we must provide, that happened in 2021, it says must provide for the making of payment of expenses associated with carers' responsibilities that are adequate and reasonable. We already have something in there which says, in addition to clause 1 of spouse and partner expenses, council will provide support in the exercise of a counsellor's civic duties to a carer of a counsellor with special needs, or a counsellor as a carer as the need arises. So I think that pretty well covers that anyway. So the recommendation is there to put that out on display for 28 days as required by the legislation.
Thank you. Councillor Bushell, you move the recommendation. Thank you. Second for the motion, please. Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, I will put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. The contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Councillors, over to page 196, 10.5, the operational plan review. The General Manager.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's as provided, councillors.
Thank you. So, councillors, this important document, is there anyone that had any points that they wish to raise? While you're looking, I might kick it off. Just to advise council, just in relation to page 206, under commercial services, seek ongoing funding for the operations of TIAC. We've actually formally requested a meeting with Minister Cook and the new Agriculture Minister, Minister Saunders, who lives in Dubbo, so hopefully we might be able to make that happen. We know the former Minister of Agriculture, Adam Marshall, was always saying that he'd love to come, but there were some roadblocks for varying reasons. So we've put in another request just on that, and particularly for the information of the Deputy Mayor, who's Chairman of that committee, and the other members, councillor members of that committee. So that is for your information. Councillors, any other items that anybody had? I think also, sorry, the Deputy Mayor. Oh no. Also in relation to, I think I spoke to the General Manager about it briefly, about the Traffic Committee, having that captured somewhere in engineering services. I just feel it needs to be captured, being a statutory organisation.
Yes, Mr Mayor, that will raise that as part of an action under the new operational plan.
Thank you. Any other items, councillors? Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. On page 214, it talks about economic development. One of the priorities is to assist with the golf club with the grant application for clubhouse improvements. Is that an ongoing, just looking for grants as they come along?
Page 214, under economic development, tourism resident attraction, the very top one. Thank you, Councillor McLaren. Pardon me. I'll defer to the town planner.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So I did assist the golf club with the grant application, but unfortunately they were unsuccessful. I am meeting with them again this coming Tuesday to go over their application, and we'll see if there's some areas they can improve to be ready for next time.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any other items, councillors? I'll just have to... Councillor Reinhold.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. On page 233, Apollo Place, project has stalled. Could we just have an update on what's happening there, please?
Thank you, Councillor Reinhold. I think that there's a report coming to council in relation to Apollo Place. I know I put in a report, request, and I think someone else has as well. So there'll be a future report, I understand, coming in relation to Apollo Place. General Manager?
That's correct, Mr Mayor. It stalled because of the organisation we were dealing with. The CEO passed away, so it's obviously hasn't been high on their priority for this time, but they're now back onto it, so there will be a report come back.
Thank you very much. You don't need the town planner?
I'll just confirming that I'm working on that report.
Yeah, thank you very much. Councillor, just on page 249, just in relation to the seeking full funding of the installation of a roundabout at the intersection of Hoskins Polaris streets. Obviously you see the update there, and I know something that we will be talking about in our various IP&R planning workshops and budgetary workshops, that something that I think we do need to formally request the member for Cootamundra for funding, and arguably the federal member as well, because I think timing is everything. And so if the General Manager and the Director of Admin and Finance can note that, please, to put in the melting pot for future IP&R workshops. So, councillors, anything further? If not, is someone prepared to move, please, recommendation page 196, that the Q2 Operation Plan Review for 2021-2022 be adopted, or is there an alternate? Councillor Good, thank you. Second for the motion. Councillor Reinhold, thank you. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. I declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Mr General Manager, is there anything of a urgent late nature? The General Manager. No business, Mr Mayor, but just let Council know that on your desk you'll have this record of Council decisions. You'll get that each month, and it's also on the hub. But what will happen is that'll be updated. All the ones that are completed will drop off, so you'll be able to keep an eye on what hasn't been completed and what has been completed. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Mr General Manager. I think Council will be most grateful for that. So yes, we thank you. Now, Councillors, let's go over to page 260, the Engineering Services Department, and we have nil. Nothing of an urgent late nature. No, we know there's a heck of a lot happening in engineering services, Mr. General. Look, you can't win, because we go quick when you flood us with reports, and then when you don't have any, we're hanging on you. But anyway, thank you, Mr. Engineer. Let's, councillors, proceed over to page 261, the Environmental Services Department report. 12.1, council nominated members for the Regional Planning Panel, and I defer to the Town Planner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this report calls for some nominations from council, and I ask that they's been named. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Town Planner. Go to Councillor Good.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. How often do they meet?
Thank you, Councillor Good. The Town Planner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it is on a as required basis. Councillor Judd was involved with a couple of projects during his previous nomination, but it's really only perhaps a couple of times during the term of council.
Thank you. Councillor Judd, you were the current serving member. Are you keen to stand, or you wish to stand aside? What's your wish, Councillor Judd? Councillor Judd?
Yes, we met about 3 items in the last five-year term, and yes, I'm available to serve again if needed.
Thank you. So you're prepared to serve. Just remember, there is we're required to have an alternate as well to Councillor Judd, and also one to Mr Donoghue, which obviously Mr Donoghue, the General Manager at Coolman Shire, has indicated that he would be pleased to accept nomination onto the panel with Mr Farmer from Coolman Shire willing to be the alternate. So I don't know whether Councillor Good, whether you'd be keen to consider, you know, the alternate position. Okay, is there anybody else that has a burning desire? Yes, well, councillors, we have Councillor Judd as the be member of the regional planning panel, with Councillor Good as the alternate, and further that we appoint Mr Tony Donoghue, the General Manager of Coolman Shire, as a panel member with Mr Farmer as his alternate. So, Councillor Bushell, you're happy to move that direction? Thank you. Councillor Oliver, the second of the motion. Discussion. We're just waiting for Mr Donoghue and Mr Farmer. Nominate? Yes. I think it's Don Oghue, isn't it, Councillor Irvine? Isn't it? We'll just check that. I had it in my head there was a G, but I'm not sure now. Do you know, Mr. General Manager?
That's how it's done.
What?
Without a G. There's no G in it.
No G.
Can we Google, because I have a feeling. I just have a feeling, and if I'm wrong, I will say so loudly and proudly. Pardon? Has a G. Right. See, you've got to back yourself sometimes. And where's that from, Councillor Bushell? His son. Oh. Okay, thank you very much. We've clarified that. Don Oghue. Okay, Councillor Bushell and Councillor Oliver, are you happy with the motion that appears on your screen? Okay, if there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Page 262, 12.2, proposed employment zones, the town planner.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. These changes have come from the Department of Planning, and so there is relatively limited changes for Temora Shire in that we have quite an easy match-up between our existing zones and the new zones that they're proposing. This will go on public exhibition as organised by the Department of Planning, but it was required that we bring it to Council's attention prior to and seek their endorsement that we support the public exhibition.
Right. Oh, no. Here's one. Oh.
It's too hard.
Next town planner, any questions? Councillor Good?
I've got a couple. I suppose partly I expressed my frustration at these changes because I don't think they were changed that long ago, and now they're getting changed again. It seems they like to change them regularly without really any substance to the changes. But I'd like to ask a couple of questions about these. Building identification signs are permitted with consent. Why do they need consent?
Town Planner.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So these would be only building identification signs that are not exempt. So many types of signs are exempt development. But I did discuss this with the director about whether we should just take that out. And in the end, we're proposing just to leave things the way they are because at the moment, the state environmental planning policy of exempt development lists some conditions under which building identification signs are exempt from needing consent. And all it would do was where there was a sign that it is a building identification sign, but it doesn't meet the requirements of being exempt, then we receive an application. But I can't think of an occasion where we've received an application because all of the signage meets the requirements to be exempt.
And my next question is, in mixed use, home industries are listed as permitted with consent, but home occupations aren't. What's the difference?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. So again, it is just to do with the definitions there. But if there's something that you'd like us, during the exhibition period, we can review that in greater detail to see if there's circumstances where we might change the listing to be exempt, then we can do that as part of this process.
I suppose I'd probably just like to see the definitions of what is a home industry and what is a home occupation.
Yeah, I'm happy to provide that information to you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Good. Any further comments? Councillor Bushell, you did have your rights.
I was just going to voice our frustrations regarding the changes as well. I've heard that they've already changed their name, that they've dropped the I just only recently, so they'd love to change the Department of Planning.
Okay. Any further queries, comments, councillors? If there's not, there's a recommendation there on page 264. Someone like to move that or something? Councillor Bushell, if you're moving. Seconder, please. Councillor Good, second the motion. Any further comment? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Aye. Against? Motion carried. Back to the Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Councillors, we now proceed over to page 286, 12.3, the draft Local Environmental Plan, LEP Amendment, Agri-Tourism, the Town Planner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So again, some further changes from the Department of Planning. So this is an amendment that introduces some additional definitions and amends some existing definitions. It is quite relevant to our Shire, being about agritourism. So we are supporting from a staff perspective that Council take up this opportunity so that if there are potential uses, we can consider them with consent.
Thank you very much. Councillors, I go to Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question for the officer. So RU5 Village, is that Springdale and Area Park? And what size lots do they go up to, RU5, sorry?
Thank you. The Town Planner.
Yes, that is correct. That is the zone of the villages, and the minimum lot size is 2,000 square metres.
Thank you very much. I now go to the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair.
Thanks, Mayor. Town planner, similar, they talk about farm gate premises and farm gate accommodation and different things. What's the difference in, particularly farm gate premises? What are they talking about there?
Town planner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So really they're talking about, cellar door premises and the like. So, or if you're able to offer some sort of sales from your farm, they're trying to make it a broader definition and not just involve sales of wine. And further about farm gate premises is to do with having experiences at your farm. So again, if there were farmers that were interested in offering experiences on their farm, again, this is something that we could receive an application for and consider if there was a farmer that was interested in offering that in conjunction with their farm.
Thank you. I now go to Councillor Good.
I've got a couple of comments about, a question, I suppose, to the Town Planner, if I may, Mr Mayor, for you. These sort of farm stay accommodation and farm gate premises, they're available under the current LEP, I presume. Is that correct?
Thank you. Town Planner.
There is, currently scope for some farm stay accommodation, and yes, some cellar doors is already available as a use, but the intention, I believe, is to try and strengthen the role of agritourism and making that clear that that is a type of use that's formally defined and that council can receive applications about.
Because reading this, I think it has the opposite effect, because it limits what they can do and their size. For example, the 75 square metres, which I understand is the maximum size you can have, is a fairly small building. And at the moment, there's no limitation other than how council perceive it and whether council want to approve it. I would suggest that 75 square metres is a fairly small building. Although I do note that they do exempt an existing house, which is probably something that would be used. But yeah, my thoughts are is that the existing LEP is probably sufficient, and this would hamstring council with some developments that we may think is beneficial for the town, but they don't meet the definitions here. So I'm of the opinion that we shouldn't accept it, and we should just leave our LEP the way it is, if we can.
Thank you very much. Pardon me, Councillor Good. I go to the Town Planner.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So I think the intention was to try to direct that the farm stay accommodation is meant to be small scale and cabins, and not having people building dwellings that are not permitted. So they're having multiple dwellings on their farm, which they're not intending at all to use for agricultural farm stay. They're just wanting to build extra houses that are not permitted. So we can nominate a larger size if you think that was a more appropriate. So 75 square metres was, I guess, the guided size. The minimum size they said was 60 square metres, but I've presented the suggested size, but I'm happy to receive an alternate minimum size if that's council's wish. And I think my opinion, I'd like to see us not opt out of this altogether, in that if we don't choose to include these definitions at all, then we're left out of the opportunities to be involved should there be applications that come our way. But if you'd like to consider something as an alternate with the size involved, I'm happy to receive some feedback, given that this will be something that's still under consultation with the Department of Planning.
I thought I'd read here,
Councillor Good.
I thought I'd read here that 75 square metres is the maximum that we're allowed. And I think by adopting this, we're limiting what the discretion of council, and I think that's why we're here, is to, if we think that there's a development that it's appropriate, we shouldn't be hamstrung by these sort of conditions that's forced on us, really. I think it should be, if we think it's appropriate for council, and depending on what the size is in the situation and how it fits into our shire, I think we should not be hamstrung by any policies. We should be able to accept it or reject it based on how we believe that it fits into council and the area.
Thanks very much, Councillor Good. Thank you. The Town Planner.
So currently there is limitations on the number of bedrooms that you are able to offer as farmstay accommodation. I believe it's only around 3 bedrooms, so it is still small as what is available. I believe there are considerable restrictions anyway on preventing camping and other types of farmstay accommodation. And so I'm happy to look more closely into this in conjunction with yourself, if that was appropriate.
Thank you very much, Madam Town Planner. I note that on page 294 that says preliminary responses are due by the end of this month. That informs the draft. And then the draft is out, and by the end of March, we can have a further opportunity to have a say. So, in relation to Councillor Good, did you wish to pursue that further?
Yes, I would, Mr. Mayor. I would like to know what the existing conditions and restrictions are compared to what's being proposed, so we can see like for like.
Yeah. So would you like to move that way?
Yes. Well, there was other. I would like to move that that our decision be deferred to the next council meeting, where a report is brought back to council with the current restrictions and the proposed new development restrictions, so that we can see like for like.
Thank you, Councillor Good. I do note that obviously the preliminary responses were due by the end of February. However, we do have another. Oh well, I suppose not really, because that's the final document. The Town Planner.
I'm happy to work give an indication of council's willingness to be involved, if that's council's wish, and then we can offer some additional fine-grained detail with our final response.
Okay, so Councillor Good.
Can we ask for an extension?
Thank you. The Town
I think it's unlikely. They've got a raft of all of these changes that are coming. Multiple consultations on various amendments. I would think it would be unlikely we would get an extension, but
unless we wanted to put in the request. Councillor Good.
I would like us to put in a request, and it's something that's frustrated me for a long time on various committees that I've been involved with, is that we get reports and we get very short period in which to have to reply, and quite often they're not appropriate. And I suppose I would like to move a further resolution that we express our disappointment in the short period of time, particularly considering that the election was held in December with Christmas break, the short period of time that we've got to provide a written response.
Thank you. I might, Councillor Good, deal with your first motion. That have we captured that here? Council defers the decision to the March meeting of Council, and further, the Council express our dissatisfaction with the short time frame. Well, it is. It's a it is a consultation document. They're seeking the views of council and have new councils elected. Did you wish to include, Councillor Good, about formally requesting an extension?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And further, the Council expressed a dissatisfaction with a short time frame for consultation and request an extension up to, Okay, so Councillor Good, does that capture?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So Councillor Good is moving what's on your screen, and obviously those last two lines are deleted. Thank you. Councillor, is there a seconder for the motion, please? Councillor Bushell, thank you. Moved and seconded. Is further discussion? If there's no further discussion, just in further discussion, if the response comes back with no, you are not granted an extension, then I suppose a report will come back to the March council meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I'd prefer to have no response than a response without full consultation.
Yeah, no, thank you, Councillor Good. So Councillor Good and Councillor Bushell have moved the motion that's on your screen, and I'll repeat it for those listening. That Council defers a decision to the March meeting of Council, and further that Council express its dissatisfaction with the short time frame for consultation and request an extension of up to 1 month. And I also think it'd be handy to ask the local member for Cootamundra to help advocate for that extension. So if we can, if the mover and second are happy just to include that. Moved and seconded. If there's no further discussion, we'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. The contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Councillors, let's go over to page 300, 12.4. The development application proposed a motel cabin, studio, car park and access bridge at 132 Victoria Street in Temora, and defer to the town planner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So council's aware there was 2 presentations in the public forum about this development application. I've written the report to cover the issues and highlight the concerns raised, and I'm handing over for council's consideration.
Thank you very much. Council is a very important DA that is before you, and it was great to have the developer here, but also to have Mr. Gaynor talk to us as well to share his reflections. Let's go to Councillor Good.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Mr. Sherwood should be congratulated for this extra development. It obviously shows a confidence in the town that this sort of thing is needed, and I know extra accommodation is needed and has been needed in Temora for a long time. I'm also aware that that block of land has been owned by the people, off and on by the people who've owned Aramet Hotel, with plans to do something for years, and I'm glad that something's actually going to happen. And I move the recommendation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Good. Councillor Good's moving the recommendation that appears on the bottom of page 312. Is there a seconder for the motion, please? Councillor Good, are you? Thank you. Councillor Irvine, were you seconding the motion?
No.
No. Okay. So I'll, if you can hold fire, thank you. Is there a second of the Deputy Mayor? Thank you. Moved and seconded. Discussion. Councillor Irvine.
I've got some serious concerns with just the effect of the people in King Street. I believe that there is adequate room to access the development via the Victoria Street entrance. It'll need some minor modifications to layout and stuff, but there's no end of cabins available to get them in any shape and size that you wish and lay them out in a sensible fashion. I think they've already got an existing entrance, and to put an entrance to the cabins off Victoria Street would have zero impact on anyone. However, to put the entrance in King Street with a bridge across the drain, I think is going to create some ongoing issues, which I don't think are necessary. And further to that, I think that drain is potentially going to need some major rework in the not too distant future when you consider the bus trip we went on the other day. And I don't think putting infrastructure over an asset that we may have to revisit fairly shortly is appropriate. I'm all for the development. I think it's a great idea. I note that they're concerned about the loss of the tree. However, it's interesting to note that that particular species is noted on our pest species. It's the only one there. I think it can be replaced. And I just think there's plenty of opportunity to put the driveway through that block, circle the cabins and just readdress that design, and I think it'll satisfy a lot of residents. I don't think they need to be affected in King Street at all by this development.
Thank you very much, Councillor Irvine. I now go to Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I express the same concerns. The other thing, by putting a bridge across that that drain would impact on water flow, and there's enough blockages along that way as it is. And Councillor Good said something, and I don't know if I understood it correctly or not, but apparently this block where the entry is, where we're proposing it to be, is owned by his trust or something or other, and you said that they could be purchased or whatever it was. I agree. Sorry, amalgamated, right? Yep. I mean, yeah, and this entry from Victoria Street would not impact on the residents of, well, Little Aurora Street. Is it Little? I have a glass. Little Aurora Street and also King Street. I think it's the logical place to put it myself. But anyway, that's all I have to say on the matter.
Thanks very much, Councillor Oliver. I now go to Councillor Bushell.
I tend to disagree with the entrance to Victoria Street. There's too many blind sites when you come in and out. When you go on site and you actually pretend to be in the car and whether I trespassed on property. You know, there is, even when you go into the motel entrance, it's hard to know when you converge out safely. And this is further restricted with more site restrictions. So I think the Victoria Street entrance proposal is more unsafe than what the proposed King Street one is. That's just my input.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bushell. I now go to Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I drove down there and parked in that thing and tried to drive out, and I didn't particularly find it too bad to come out. Thinking. I also think there's plenty of room to get down there 6 metres or more beside that existing dwelling. I'm not terribly in favour of putting a bridge over the stormwater drain for various reasons, not least of all is the precedent that it will set for any other person who has a particular reason that they might like to have a bridge over for access reasons or what have you. I don't think that's a very good precedent to build bridges over our assets. And I also worry, this is not a relevant factor for the DA, but insurance-wise, that land does get flooded, 10, 30 centimetres of water. So I do worry about their insurance cover over land that's water-prone. But that's, I guess, a side issue. But it does worry me that I'm approving something that may not get insurance. But yes, I am in favour of the development. I think the entrance off Victoria Street is not a problem. But the bridge, definitely, I'm not in favour of. Thank you.
No, thanks very much, Councillor McLaren. Councillors, further discussion on the motion. I don't know if the town planner has any comments in response to any of the councillors that have passed comment thus far, or the engineer. I'm sure you would have let us know. Oh no, the engineer would like to respond. The engineer.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just in relation to the bridge. Yeah, I guess I probably agree with all sides of the argument. I don't think it's ideal, but at the same time, I'm not losing sleep over it. Yeah, I think there's cases where other bridges have been built over the drains in years gone by. The amount of water that goes down there is currently governed by the culvert structure at Austral Street, and it's unlikely that we'll ever try and push any more water down that path. So I think as the level of water that is there now is likely, hopefully, what's going to be at its worst. However, I have seen water on the block, and I have seen enough water that it jumps out at that location and runs down King Street. Probably the other concern I'd have is that little Aurora, whatever that little Aurora Street is, that back lane is in very, very, very poor condition, and as soon as we start allowing more traffic on there, it'll fall to pieces, and we're going to have to upgrade it anyway, but it'll accelerate that process. I think if the development layout can be done flexibly so they can come off Victoria Street, maybe that's a good solution, but at the same time, I'm not going to lose sleep if the culvert stays there.
Thank you very much. Councillor McLaren.
Is it appropriate that I move an amendment that we can vote on?
You can, the move and second, I'll ask them first if they still wish to stick with their original motion. So Councillor Good, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair, do you wish to stick with your motion, or would you like to hear the amendment first?
I'd like to stick to the...
So Councillor Good.
I'd like to stick to the original motion, but there can be an amendment moved to that motion before we vote on the motion. And then if the amendment gets up, then that will become the motion.
That's true, yeah. But I just thought that you may have considered. Anyway, I'm happy to take the Deputy Mayor, sorry.
Before that, can we just get a bit more explanation about entering onto Victoria Street on that there, as far as site distances and things like that? Is there any issues for doing that? Right near the bridge there and everything too.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. The engineer.
It's probably too hard to comment at this stage, but I doubt. I doubt that it would not be possible to access that point. But I can't categorically say that. There's obviously the bridge is a bit of an obstacle, and also there's trees to the back to the east. That are an obstacle. Just in relation to the bridge as well, in the past the bridge I can think that was private but now is owned by councillors at the front of the Pinnacle House, Aurora Street. And that bridge was put in when one of the previous owners owned it in the last 15 years. I do agree that's not ideal to have assets over our assets. If we do go to replace our asset, well then we could be up for but at the same time, we've got to allow access across. So.
Thank you. Just a question before I go to Councillor McLaren. I just noted on page 319 in one of the responses so in blue, I understand on page 319, Madam Town Planner, that is from the proponent.
That's correct.
Yeah, thank you. So where it says the buildings will be built off-site and delivered, it is a long-term project. Now, I just wondered, what's the definition of long, just for Council's information, please?
So that is at the discretion of the applicant. So they've applied for all 6 units plus the studio, but they've indicated that not all 6 units will arrive at the same time, but depending on the success of their project, they might start with a couple, and then if it is successful, then they'll add a couple more.
And they have 3, is it 3 years at the DA? If this DA is approved, is it 3 years, or what's the term?
So because they've applied for all 6, so once they actually commence by, say, putting 1 unit, the consent is valid. So they then have infinite time then to actually complete it, but because they've commenced, the consent becomes valid. But it's 5 years if they did nothing, it would then lapse.
Okay, right, thank you. Go to Councillor Bushell. Councillor Bushell, you're on.
So with the electricity pole that's with the massive big transformer in that area, that would be part of that to be relocated or moved at the developer's cost?
Thank you, Councillor Bushell, the Town Planner.
Yeah, so if it was that was found that was essential to move that, then it would be at the developer's cost. But they haven't got to that particular stage. We'll just condition that electricity be provided, and they'll have to get back to us after consultation about what's necessary.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Councillor Irvine. If you want to speak, you get
after that bus trip the other day regarding this drain, and the comment from the engineer, and I'll just ask for advice on that, seems to be that the tactic in relation to stormwater is going to be detention. However, that will always come with risk, and there's always a situation where your detentions will be full, and then you will cop the full force of the stormwater at some point with a failure. Now, we're already experiencing significant problems with stormwater, and we're going to add the Highfield estate in the residential and the industrial element of it, and there's probably more opportunity for some more built infrastructure up in that area as well. I personally think that that eastern drain is going to need to be deepened and widened at some point in the not too distant future, and I would say relatively short time frame to accommodate the increase in the stormwater, because we really are setting ourselves up based on where we're at now and what we intend to increase the flow, that I think any idea of building over that infrastructure at the moment is not very wise. And if that's the only access they've got, if we were to have to go through that process, like when you consider that drain, and I don't want to go on for too long, but realistically there's available land for the majority of the length of that drain. Like that lane could be resumed and used to widen and deepen that drain. There's most sites along that drain can be resumed. Now, I know it's a massive project, but that seems to be the key problem that we're facing with that whole new development up there, is what to do with the stormwater. We've already got a problem with it now, and we haven't even built, have not cleared a block up there. So that's my key concern in relation to the bridge and the drain. If the proponent was to go ahead with this development with access off Victoria Street, I think that they could basically trade unimpinged, regardless of what we do, along that drain. And further to that access onto Victoria Street, I think there's a fair distance between his property alignment and the fog line, you can basically get a full car out sitting on the road, looking to your right, checking access before you actually have to merge. It's not like you're coming out of a lane and like at the back of the IGA, for example, and you are into the traffic. So that's my views in relation to the drain and the traffic.
Thanks very much, Councillor Irvine. Go to Councillor Judd.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I share Councillor Irvine's concern about the stormwater. My question probably to the engineer and the town planner is clause 25 on page 312 about the units having to be 450 mils above ground level. I'm a bit concerned whether that's good enough or not, and whether just ask your opinion on whether that's sufficient, please.
Thanks, Councillor Judd. We'll go to the town planner.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. So this figure was based on the Temora flood study, which estimates that the maximum flood level in a 1 in 100 year event would be up to 30 centimetres of water. So the applicant has advised that based on the footing set up for the proposed cabins, the floor level would meet that the 450 millimetre requirement. So that condition is in there to just confirm that they must meet that height above ground level.
Thank you. Councillor Judd, further comment?
Will that flood study take into account all the new subdivisions?
Thank you. Town planner.
So the flood studies are based on the modelling that was done at the time. So that's the maps that we've got to work with at this time.
Thank you. The engineer, do you wish to speak? No. Unbelievable. Anyway, you're most welcome to. Anyway, Councillor, this is a serious issue, and I appreciate I'm being very flexible in terms of the number of speakers and so on, but it is important we do this properly. The engineer.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Listen, the only thing I can see, like at the end of the day, council will make a decision on this. The only thing that I can see where the developer may be upset is I do believe that the precedent about building over the drain has already happened, and I think they definitely did approach council maybe 18 months ago or 2 years ago and asked about the crossing of the bridge, and I think our response at that time was, listen, provided it is designed to meet the road standards or Australian standards, and that it is larger than the existing, it would be likely that it would be able to be done. Listen, that's just I would have to confirm exactly what went on, but just flagging that. How much of an issue that is, I'm not sure. It's no, it's not, I guess, set in concrete, but my recollection is that something along them lines occurred. So,
thank you. Well, there's a general manager. Do you have anything that you'd like to add to this lengthy debate?
No, Mr Chairman. This is mainly a technical issue, which I'm happy to leave to my colleagues.
Thank you. Well, councillors, we have a motion that's currently before us, and I will read it again. And that is on the motion of Councillor Good and the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair, resolved that Council approve the development application 4-2022 Motel Cabins Studio Car Park Access Bridge and lot consolidation at 132 Victoria Street, subject to conditions listed within the report. So that is the motion before us. Now, Councillor McLaren, you've obviously been gracious enough to listen to further discussion. You did flag an amendment. Councillor McLaren.
It does put us in a difficult position having some preliminary discussions indicating favourably to a developer. It's very difficult for council. I think that's very unfortunate. But I'm still quite against the access bridge in a precedent where I know there may be the odd one, but you have to stop at some stage, or when do you stop? Or you'll end up with, 50. So I'm still inclined to move an amendment that the development be approved with the withdrawal of the access bridge, with the removal and access on Victoria Street.
So thank you. So Councillor McLaren is moving an amendment that Council approve development application 4-2020 as per the other, with the exception or exclusion of the bridge, the access bridge, and the Victoria, and the access to be from Victoria Street. So have we captured that? The General Manager?
Mr Mayor, just a question for the Town Planner. That would substantially change the actual application, given that there's buildings within that trafficable area.
Thank you. So I will defer to the Town Planner.
So essentially the concept would be the same in that they would still wish to achieve the 6 cabins and the studio. There may be a slight or moderate change in the layout in order to accommodate the road and ensure that there was suitable space for vehicles to turn around. We would need to, if this was council's view that it could only be improved in that form, we would need to advise the applicant and receive amended layout plans, and then we could assess if it was significant enough to warrant that we needed to re-advertise. We could, or if we could form the opinion that it was generally consistent with the previous application and no greater impact upon neighbouring residents, we may be able to approve it under using amended plans. So it will depend on further consultation with the applicant. And then we'd have to reassess whether it needs to go to re-advertising, and then perhaps it would have to come back before council again if there were still unresolved objections. So I guess in short, it's unknown the level of change that would be necessary, but it would still need to meet the same general consistency of the number of units and the ability for vehicles to park and turn around and exit in a forward direction in a satisfactory manner.
Okay, thank you. General Manager?
I'm just concerned, Mr Mayor, about the wording there, that the development application be approved, given what the Town Planner has just said.
Okay, so therefore, in Councillor McLaren, and this is why I've been a little bit relaxed with not having got a seconder, so we can help Councillor McLaren formulate this amendment. So I'm going to Councillor Bushell.
So I'm allowed to comment.
Councillor Bushell, we're just trying to craft this amendment for Councillor McLaren.
Okay, thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, on page 303, that's the layout of the application for their set out. So I don't know how we can approve the layout with an exclusion of the access bridge. So I think it has to be either a refusal or an approval.
Okay. Thanks very much, Councillor Bushell. Councillor McLaren?
Can I withdraw my amendment and we'll vote on the...
Yeah, you may. Thank you. So Councillor McLaren has withdrawn the amendment. Thank you. And thanks, councillors, for your your perseverance, because it's important we get this right. So I'm not being as strict as normally would be in this regard. So thank you, Councillor McLaren. You've withdrawn your amendment. So therefore that reverts back to the original motion from Councillor Good and the second of the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair. That was moved that Council approve the development application 4-2022, motel cabin, studio, car park, access bridge and lot consolidation at 132 Victoria Street, subject to conditions. Is the mover and seconder still happy with their motion as it stands? Okay, thank you. If there's no further discussion, Councillor Judd.
So if we don't like it, we have to refuse it. We have to vote against the motion, right?
Well, that's my understanding, yes. Thank you. So, councillors, I'm going to put the motion that is before you on your screens. All those of that opinion, and of course being a DA, we all have to have our vote recorded. So all those of that opinion, please raise your hands. All those to the contrary. Thank you. So I declare the motion lost. Now, did we capture those? So those that are in favour of the motion was the Deputy Mayor. Beg pardon? No, I didn't support. So those that were in favour of the motion was the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Good, Councillor Bushell. That's it. Yeah. And the rest, we oppose the motion. Okay, thank you. So declare the motion defeated. Is there a new motion, please? The General Manager.
I would think, Mr Mayor, that the Town Planner would advise the applicant and advise the reasons for it or the background to it in relation to the bridge.
Okay. Town Planner.
Yes, I can advise the applicant of the outcome of Council's decision, and I'll seek their further input on what they decide to do in an alternate.
Thank you very much. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Irvine.
And I can only speak for myself, but I'm in full support of the concept of the proposal.
Exactly. Thanks, Councillor Irvine. And Councillor Bushell?
Under section, is it 8.7, Claire, they can undertake a review of our decision, correct?
The Town Planner?
Yes, they can request that. I think we'll, I guess, start out by a process of advising of Council's general support for the concept, but just not the access, and see if they wish to instead amend their application. But we'll advise them that there is the option to review.
Hang on. No, I don't abstain. I was against the motion. I'm not into abstaining because that's the coward's way out, in my personal view. Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to place on Council's record that I too am in favour of the development, just not that access point. So.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. I think all of us in this chamber, every single one of us are in favour with the general principle. We all know that, and I'm sure the Town Planner will share those genuine sentiments to the developer. However, you've heard the matters that have concerned council, and I'm sure the developer, being the reasonable man that I know him to be, will certainly consider that and move forward. So thank you very much. And thank you very much, councillors and staff, for your patience and perseverance, and we very much look forward to receiving a further amended DA in due course. Nothing further of an urgent late nature from the Town Planner for Environmental Services?
No, Mr Mayor.
No, thank you very much. So, councillors, let's move on to page 322, the Administration and Finance Department report, 13.1, rate peg. We'll do our best to keep our blood pressure at an appropriate level. The Director.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The report's as written, just probably a change to the recommendation that it's been pointed out to me we shouldn't go straight to the Minister for Local Government. We should go through our member for Cootamundra, Steph Cook. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillors, all of you will recall when IPART, the Independent Pricing and Regulatory Tribunal, and traditionally since the Fit for the Future, IPART has been a cussing word in this chamber. Once again, IPART, in my view, councillors, have proven how completely and utterly out of touch they are with the local government sector. I am absolutely appalled and disgusted, as is every other councillor, staff member in this chamber and throughout the state, particularly in rural New South Wales. For them to come up with a 0.7% maximum allowable rate peg limit is a disgrace, and there's nothing else that you can say. Our costs keep going up and up and up. We not only have, of course, the appropriate staff increases that are there, and that's fine, but this does not even keep within a quarter of CPI. And how they believe that local government, particularly in rural areas, can function on something like that, it's an absolute slap in the face, yet again, from this out-of-touch organisation. It sickens me and it disgusts me, and we cannot let this lie down. I certainly know that the member for Cootamundra has been bombarded with calls and representations already, informally, certainly informally from this council along with others, but also our association, the LGNSW, New South Wales Country Mayors, and certainly I know Riverina JO want to tackle this as well, and not just lie down and cop it. So, and I commend the Director on the report that she's provided to Council in relation to this particular issue. So that's my feelings, and I've tried to keep them as contained as I possibly could. The Director of Administration and Finance.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So there's an amended recommendation up on the screen if you wanted to have a look at that and see if you're happy with it.
Thank you. So the recommendation there, presentations to IPART, to the member for Cootamundra, Country Mayors Association, and we're probably, because the Riverina JO now does the advocacy and lobbying, so if we can just change that from REROC to the Riverina JO, please. Now, thank you. I don't know whether making representations, that seems fairly lightweight to me, and no disrespect, but you know, to me there needs to be more emphasis. Councillor Good.
I just wanted to make a comment that it's interesting that the increase that we can have in the rate pegging doesn't even cover our increased superannuation liability for wages. I was talking to another council today, and they said their increase in insurance is more than their rate pegging amount.
Thanks, Councillor Good. Yeah, again, that's obscene. Now, when 2 years ago I was there with the CEO of the Riverina JO, meeting with senior officials from IPART in Sydney, their headquarters. And first of all, it was they were amazed that we actually wanted to meet them on their own turf. and were quite shocked, and I extended an open invitation to them as the chairman, who couldn't be with us, his board and his senior staff, to come out, meet with councils right across our Riverina footprint, sit down and talk to them about the real impacts of their decisions on the ground truthing. And there was an open invitation which they have not accepted, and they need to be reminded of that. Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So is this resolution an opportunity that we're making submissions to IPART as they're asking on page 335? They've got a media release about their seeking opportunities to have your say by the 25th of March 2022. Is that what we're doing, writing to them? Page 335. It says opportunities to have your say are available on the website. Submissions to IPART are due by the 25th of March. So I imagine that's the avenue. Is that only domestic waste, is it?
Yes.
Or the whole thing?
Domestic waste is my understanding. The Director?
Yeah, so through you, Mr Mayor, so that's the next item that they're reviewing, or they've reviewed already, the price increases in domestic waste services. So they're looking at benchmarking the increases for domestic waste services as well. So that's the next thing we'll write to them about that too.
Thank you. So is there going to be a report in relation to that, or we will, for next council meeting, for us to consider that particular issue?
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, I intend to bring a report back.
Okay, thank you very much. So we can determine to put in a submission then. Words fail me at the present time. Thank you. Let's go to Councillor Judd.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I fully support your strong remarks earlier about IPART. It was IPART who we had to deal with from the Fight for the Future process, in which they battled very hard at all times. I've never been in favour of applying for a rate variation, because I think we should try and, while we're getting the 2 or 3%, I think we have to learn to live with our means. But can I ask the General Manager and the Director, if we had to go down that process of trying to get a rate variation, how long it would take and what's it involved, please?
Thanks, Councillor Judd. I'll defer to the Director of Administration and Finance.
I haven't actually looked at the detailed requirements, but I believe it is quite in-depth. I would say if we intended to apply for a special rate variation, we'd need to spend the next 12 months working on that to be ready to implement that from 1 July 23. It'd take at least that long, I would imagine. Yeah.
I understand, thank you. I understand, Councillor Judd, that also just going on the former Mayor of Lockhart Shire, that some of you may remember they applied for a special rate variation, was it last year? They obviously have to go through a community consultation process, so after the council determined. And I've got to say, Councillor Judd, I wouldn't personally rule anything out as far as special rate variations. I've traditionally agreed with you that live within your means, but to me, I think everything's got to be on the table, given what we're currently presented with. But yeah, the community is the key. If they, and we can prove that they have backing what council are saying, or proposing rather, then surely IPART can't knock you back. However, in Lockhart's case, they had the council unanimous, they had the community in support, and what did IPART tell them to do? IPART told them to use their existing reserves. You cannot make this up. Anyway. What's the go? Your finger's hovering around.
Can I say one thing?
The engineer.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, Council. I'll go to Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. It just seems to me that, and I don't care whether this goes in the paper or not, but it just seems to me that IPART are setting councils up to fail. It's as simple as that, you know, and this has been going on since the Fit for the Future thing. And it's just, you know, looking at it from an outsider's point of view, that's exactly what it is, you know. So anyway, I've said it, so put it in the paper if you want.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver, and I couldn't agree couldn't agree more. You just wonder, and I said this to them, and much to the horror of the CEO, Mrs. Briggs, but I did say to them that you people are obviously very capable, but you are completely out of touch with what is happening in rural and regional areas, and that led me into the invitation, the open invitation to come out here, spend time with councils, you know, and listen to the real issues. Truly, it's a must. Thank you. The patient engineer.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I guess all I was going to add is that this is having a large portfolio in roads, and scratching my head as to how they're going to be funded into the future. This is something that I have looked at, and what I have found is that majority of special rate variations, provided the process is followed, are accepted. If you have a look, it's all public information on the website, and a significant number have applied and been successful in the past 10 years.
Many of them merged councils. Thank you, Mr. Engineer. Well, councillors, there is a suggested recommendation there for council's consideration that council note the report and make strong representations, which representations can be in person, a written form, or all of the above, to IPART, to the New South Wales member for Cootamundra, the New South Wales Country Mayors Association and the Riverina JO Board, stressing council's dissatisfaction, again seems too mild to me, however that's a matter for council, with the 2022-23 rate peg announcement. Councillor Good, you're moving the recommendation as appears on the screen. Thank you. Second, Councillor Oliver. Thank you. Moved and seconded. And discussion on the motion, councillors, that obviously if this motion is passed, the Deputy Mayor, General Manager and I will obviously verbally share our council's feelings in relation to this matter, and I'm sure it'll be echoed right across the region. I know it will be, but also we'll formalise it in writing as well if the motion gets up. So I'll put the motion if there's no further discussion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. And thank you very much, councillors, but that's it's an issue that we've got to take a stand on, and we will. So thank you. Councillors, way over to page 336, 13.2, records for destruction. The Director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just the reports as written, just the routine destruction of records by Pinnacle Community Services.
Thank you. Councillor Good, the Deputy Mayor, moved, seconded to adopt the recommendation, page 336. Is there further discussion on the motion? If not, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. The contrary, no. I declare the motion carried. Thank you. Councillors, over to page 339, 13.3, quarterly budget review statement. The Director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just note a few typos there in the main part of the report. The dates actually should be 2021, not 2020. The report's as written. I'll just highlight that in the operating section of the QBR, we've incorporated the $185,000 overspend on rural unsealed roads in there, which is offset by a reduction in the capital rural unsealed roads. So we've reflected that in the QBR, as was discussed at the Assets Knox the other day.
That's right. Thank you. Thanks, Madam Director. Councillors, you have the quarterly budget review statement for that period, 1st of October 2021 to the end of December 2021. There is a recommendation there for you to consider, and that is that we adopt the quarterly budget review, or if there's an alternate, I'm happy to hear it. Councillor Bushell. Thank you. So Councillor Bushell is moving the recommendation, page 339. Seconded for the motion. Thank you, Councillor Good. Moved, seconded. Further discussion? If Not. I shall put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Councillors, let's go over to page 351, 13.4, the ARIC, which I'd like to explain acronyms. The Audit Risk Internal Improvement. I beg your pardon. The Audit Risk and Improvement Committee. Thank you. ARIC, Transition to Compliance, the Director of Administration Finance.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So the report's as written, I won't talk too much about that, but the attachment is the draft terms of reference, and I probably didn't highlight it in the report, but I did very much base it on the model, which is provided within the guidelines. And the font in blue and green is, blue is where there was a choice to be made between, this and that. And the green is where I've added some additional commentary in.
Thank you. Pardon me, Madam Director, I just see where your recommendation to rename the Internal Audit Committee to the Audit Risk Improvement Committee, and that we nominate delegate now, but also the General Manager is to appoint a council employee, and is suggesting that you would be in that role. So that would have to form part of the motion as well, wouldn't it?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I just wanted to give heads up so you can start putting that in while we discuss. So now, in relation to this, councillors, I know Councillor McLaren, you rang me yesterday that expressed an interest in serving. So that's one that wasn't going to die in a ditch if someone else was desperate. No. Thank you. So, but you have expressed an interest. But are there other councillors that would like to sit on that committee as a non-voting council? Obviously, the mayor can't be on there, as it says. Non-voting. It just seems so. Anyway. Okay. So, councillors, we have the Director of Administration and Finance that the General Manager is recommending to Council to appoint. Councillor McLaren has expressed an interest. Is there anyone else? Be great to have a ballot. No, I'm only joking. Now, so if there's no further nominations, then is someone then prepared to move that Council rename the Internal Audit Committee to the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee, and that Councillor McLaren is appointed as the non-voting councillor member, and the Director of Finance Administration.
So it should be on the resolution.
Yeah.
Oh, you've got it. Okay, thank you. So on the screen, resolve the Council rename the Internal Audit Committee to the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee, and that Council appoint Councillor McLaren as a non-voting councillor member, and the Director of Administration and Finance be appointed to provide Secretariat support, and further that Council adopt the draft Audit Risk and Improvement Committee terms of reference. Is someone prepared? Councillor Good.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I don't think it's needed that the council that we need to appoint the Director of Administration and Finance, because if we adopt the terms of reference, it states that the governing body is General Manager, Finance Director, Community Representative and Council. So I think if we adopt the terms of reference...
Oh, so you don't think we need to include that component because it's already outlined? Yeah, no, yes. That's a fair point. Thank you, Councillor Good. Go to Councillor Bushell.
How many internal audit committees do we have?
I understand that there's one. This motion is replacing, would replace the old internal audit committee.
Sorry, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Bushell.
In our minutes for January council meeting when we did delegates, there's an internal audit committee with Councillor Judd, Irvine, McLaren and Furman already on it?
That's true, and this, my understanding is, Mr. General Manager, is that if this resolution was passed, that the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee would supersede the old committee. So I'm going to the Director. Thank you. The Director of Administration and Finance.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So previously we've had an internal audit committee, but with the introduction of the new legislation, we need to have an audit. Well, we're transitioning to being compliant with the new guidelines, which requires us to have an audit risk and improvement committee. So, and under the new requirements, we can only have one non-voting councillor representative on our audit risk and improvement committee. So we're sort of, it was kind of pointed out, I think, that...
It was touched on, yes. But again, there's a lot that happens, Councillor Bushell, and we can understand why a lot of it can, be a bit overwhelming.
Going forward, we'll have the audit, we'll have an audit component of the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee, yeah.
And the Internal Audit Committee will be, non-existent. Well, this committee is replacing the old Internal Audit Committee. Yes. Right, thank you. I know. Okay, now, no, your button's not on, Councillor Irvine, no. Okay, councillors, there's a recommendation there that has been crafted. I'll read it for you in the revised version. It was there's a recommendation here that Council rename the Internal Audit Committee to the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee, and that Council appoint Councillor McLaren as a non-voting councillor member, and further that Council adopt the draft Audit Risk and Improvement Committee terms of reference. Is there someone that's prepared to move? Thank you, Councillor Good. Councillor Irvine, thank you. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. And thank Councillor McLaren for offering to be part of that committee. Councillor, there is a late report that you should have received from the Department of Administration and Finance, and that is entitled the Temora Arts Centre naming. Does every councillor have a copy of that? Okay, thank you. I go to the Director. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I do apologise that one was a late report. The report's as written. So this was following on from the January Council meeting where it was identified that Imagine Temora hadn't had an opportunity to provide their feedback to the naming of the centre. So you can see a summary of their feedback there and a recommendation for you to consider.
Thank you, Madam Director. Councillors, there's the report, and obviously Council considered at length at our last meeting the naming of the centre, and of course we did request for feedback from our Council Committee Imagine Temora. Now we have Councillor Reinhold and Councillor McLaren that sit on that committee. Do you have anything you wish to add, Councillor Reinhold?
No, Mr Mayor, it was almost unanimous.
Thank you. Councillor McLaren? No, thank you. Well, councillors, there's a recommendation there that the facility be named the Temora Arts Centre. Thank you, Councillor Good. Councillor Reinhold moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, I will put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. The town plan to be relieved because you've ordered the She was sweating where the council was going to adopt. Anyway, thank you. Just because it takes, several weeks for them to be struck, as council would know. And actually, councillors, I'm going to share with you an idea that the former mayor of Snowy Valleys gave me, Councillor James Hayes. He said on significant projects of council, he always had the all of the councillors and senior staff members acknowledged on those significant structured plaques, and so that's what we've done on this one, and we will do, of course, for the pool upgrade as well. And yes, it adds a bit of expense to the size of the plaque. However, I just thought that was a fantastic and important initiative from the former Mayor of Snowy Valley. So I just thought I'd share that with you and hope we've spelt your names correctly. So, thank you very much. Let's now proceed, councillors, to correspondence. Over to page 368. 14.1, the country music concert, and I go to the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This councils an event to be held out at Bettrick Hall on the 19th of March. They wish to use the mobile stage. It's sort of perfect use for the stage. The only issue is the cost, and the cost of it in our fees and charges is actual cost of delivery, being out of Bettrick, obviously a little bit more than around town, plus 10%. And the estimate on that to deliver it and pick it up is between $400 to $450. Now, council can determine whether to impose that or not.
Thank you very much, Mr General Manager. You've heard from the General Manager, read the correspondence, obviously a great initiative from those involved. If you, I see the light of Councillor Oliver.
Seeing the light, eh? Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think we can afford the $400 to deliver the mobile stage out to Bettrick. It's a good cause, this thing that's going to happen, this event. And I'm looking forward to going, actually, to listen to Phil Moroney. I hear him on the Facebook thing, and he's really, really good. So my wife has asked me especially that we should go, so I will be. So thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you.
I probably should declare a pecuniary interest in that, should I? No.
No, not necessary. Thanks, Councillor Oliver, very much. Go to Councillor Judd.
Yeah, I support Councillor Oliver. Just because it's out of Bettrick or Erie Park, I don't think we should be disadvantaged by having to pay the cost of getting the stage there. So I'll agree with the refund or payment.
Thank you. So, Mr General Manager, I understand that the organising committee would still have to pay, of course, the $400 bond, and then that, if it's returned in the appropriate condition, then that's reimbursed.
That's the way our current fees and charges are set up, Mr Mayor. It is a bit problematic for some groups, particularly those that are trying to, to run when they don't have a lot of dollars behind them. Generally means one of the group has to put their hand in their pocket to do that, but that is how it's read at the moment.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think, it's pretty fair. Like, it's not council's not a charity either. So, yeah, thank you. Councillor Bushell, your finger was hovering. Oh. Thank you. Well, councillors, what is your wish? We've heard from Councillor Oliver, Councillor Judd, but Councillor Oliver?
I'll move that we donate the $400 or whatever it is, the cost of placing the mobile stage at Bettrick. I'll donate the cost of... Is donate the right word?
Or donate, yes, donate the fees back. Or actually, General Manager, this is a new one, isn't it? So, the General Manager.
Yeah, it would come out of, Mr Mayor, it would come out of our donations budget, which this year's $15,000. And at the moment, as you'll see in the next item, it's up to $5,500 and we're into February.
Yeah, so the terminology though, Mr General Manager, would be that we donate back the higher costs. So, Councillor Oliver, you'll move that way?
Yes, Mr Mayor,
Thank you. Second to Councillor Judd. Thank you very much. Moved and seconded. Further discussion? If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. The contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Let's go over to page 370, 14.2, the event application, Lake Centenary, the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is, as discussed earlier in the meeting, it is Lake Centenary's 40th anniversary, and they are having a decent event in relation to it. I know Lake Centenary Management Committee is meeting a lot of the costs of the weekend, but they have requested support from council for power, the vent bins, the mobile stage, some chairs and the 2-stand toilet block, which comes out around that, well, $1,070 is the estimate.
Thank you, Mr General Manager. It's great, Councillor, to see that there is something that I know the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair, has been pushing to make sure that there is something that happens to acknowledge that. And I certainly know that those that are still alive that were on that committee are just so looking forward to coming together and reflect and share some memories, and also count our blessings as well with what we have out there today. So, Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, this is a wonderful event celebrating a wonderful facility, and I'd like to move that we approve their request and donate the cost requested back.
Thank you. I'll move that we accede to the request. Thank you. Second, Councillor Reinhold. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Further discussion? No further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Is there any urgent late items of correspondence from the General Manager, please?
No, Mr Mayor.
No, thank you. Councillors, let's go over to page 372, notices of motion. We have received a notice of motion 15.1, notice of motion stage trailer from Councillor Irvine, and I thank Councillor Irvine. He had discussed this with me some weeks ago. So, Councillor Irvine, do you wish to move your notice of motion, please?
I'd like to move that way.
Thank you. So, Councillor Irvine is moving the notice of motion, which is on top of page 373, that council staff provide a report to a future council meeting addressing the questions raised as a result of a review of emails obtained via a GIPA formal access application relating to the procurement and subsequent issues with the council's stage trailer, and with subsequent notes that follow. Thank you, Councillor Irvine. Is there a seconder for the motion? Is there, for the second time, is there a seconder for the motion? For the third and last time, is there a seconder for the motion? If there is not, the motion lapses for want of a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Irvine. Is there any other motion or to discuss this? Because I think it would be informative to have some form of report to council in terms of an update. The Deputy Mayor.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to propose an alternate motion, and I'll read it out. That council staff provide a report to a future council meeting in regard to the procurement and subsequent issues with council stage trailer, including related costs.
Okay, thank you. Is the Director captured? Oh, yeah. Mr Deputy Mayor, do you mind just repeating that again, please? We'll get the motion first.
That council staff provide a future council meeting in regarding to the procurement and subsequent issues with council stage trailer, including related costs.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Is there a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Reinhold. Moved and seconded. So I go to Councillor Irvine. So at least Councillor Irvine, that from what the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Reinhold have moved, that at least is going to tease out what effectively that you we're after, and I think all of us in the chamber, would like to know, and so we accept that as a motion. So discussion on the motion. So, Mr. Deputy Mayor, did you wish to talk on the motion?
I think it's important that we get an update on this stage. There has been some issues right through. I mean, COVID's made a big mess of being part of that, but I think, especially for our new councillors, it's worthwhile receiving a report and just to let everyone know what's been going on with it.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Councillor Irvine.
Yeah, I welcome the second motion. I was concerned that it's a pretty comprehensive list that I've put together, and there does appear to be some fair gaps in the information. So I do welcome the prospect of receiving a report in relation to it.
Thanks, Councillor Irvine. There will be, obviously, Mr. Deputy Mayor, you've mentioned, I think Councillor Irvine did too, that a future reports, obviously both councillors are acknowledging that, it's not going to be done tomorrow, but it's done in due course and as soon as practicable. So we have a motion before us that the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair and Councillor Reinhold have moved that council staff provide a report to a future council meeting in regard to the procurement and subsequent issues with council's stage trailer, including related costs. And I'd like to think even the old stage, it'd be interesting to know what that's up to. So further discussion, the General Manager.
Just want to clarify, sorry I had to go out then, to a future council meeting, I would prefer that to be deferred for a couple to a few months, because until we get the IPR stuff out of the way, that's all.
No. And thank you, Mr. General Manager. And that's why all of us within the chamber acknowledge that this is an intense period at the moment, and that's why future, we believe, is broad enough. That's right. So as long as council are happy with that, thank you. Councillor McLaren, further discussion.
On that point, I was thinking, 3 to 6 month time frame, given the planning and budgetary process that's immediately in front of us.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor McLaren. That's right. So as long as the General Manager and the staff know that if this motion is passed, that we don't expect it tomorrow, that there is that, up to around that 6 month period, which we would deem reasonable. So Council are happy. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. I declare the motion carried. Thank you very, very much. So no further notices of motion before us. We go to page 375, urgent business without notice. Is there any council that has urgent business without notice for open council? No. Thank you. Does the General Manager have any urgent business without notice?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, sorry, who was that? Oh, sorry. I thought it was that machine talking. Councillor, let's go to page 376, Councillor's information paper. I'd be pleased to receive a motion receiving the information paper. Thank you, Councillor Oliver. The Deputy Mayor moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. The contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Is there any items, councillors, that you wish to highlight or comment on? Just a question to the Director, and this is one with a question without notice. On page 384, the bottom, the very bottom where it says funding deficit. Now, because you know how normally we like to know the unrestricted reserves, which I know auditors and so on are very, very, well, they're very aware of. So could you just elaborate on that, please, if you're able to?
Yep, thank you, Mr Mayor. So it does show a deficit of unrestricted funds there at the moment, and that's largely due to a few large debtors, government grants. So the RMCC state roads work, we've just invoiced $558,000. So that work was done during December and January. There's $1.5 million in other grant funding, so a large portion of that is the aerodrome upgrades. So that totals 1.5, and that was that's $2 million basically just in those. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Councillors also, Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm just wondering on page 411, the good people of Azumazaki, the acronym after your name is DAM.
Well, I've been called worse.
I'm just wondering what they mean by it, that was all. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver, for that interesting contribution. Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just on page 405, 6 and 7 about the mobile coverage, yes, and the letters from Michael McCormack and the response from the Honourable Bridget McKenzie. She talks about communities will have further opportunities to benefit from the next round 6, and community members and local council are encouraged to contact blah 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 issues known. I know that the Trungley Hall North, sort of East Balmedman area was sort of still in a very much of a black spot at the moment. And we've got the Rural Ratepayers meeting out there on the 10th of March, so I'd really like to give them some information about their coverage in their area and whether round 6 might be something we can advocate for them, on behalf of them for, or something.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. The General Manager.
Councillor McLaren, the Economic Development Manager has, he asked a while ago, he asked for information on black spots, and that information has been forwarded on to the black spot funding round, but I'll get him to brief you on where that's up to.
Thank you, that'd be great.
Thank you. Just further to that, Mr General Manager, I would assume that updated list has been referred to the REROC board and the CEO.
I'd have to take that on notice.
Thank you, if you can, because there's also that regional list that we need to keep updating as well. So thank you. Anything further in the information paper, councillors? If not, in accordance with Section 10A of the Local Government Act 1993, I advise that there are several matters listed as confidential, and accordingly I require a motion to have those matters considered, please. Thank you, Councillor Irvine. Councillor Good, moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you, Mr Mangelsdorf. We resume into open council and the recording has commenced. Thank you. Councillors, members of senior staff, I advise that the following motions have been brought forward by council from closed session into open session, and those resolutions are as follows. On the motion of Councillor Irvine and Councillor Good, it was resolved that council move into confidential at 6:45 p.m. The motion was carried. Minutes of the Economic Development Visitations Committee held on the 8th of February 2022. On the motion of Councillor McLaren and Councillor Reinhold, it was resolved that the reports be received and the motion was carried. On the motion of Councillor McLaren and Councillor Oliver, it was resolved that the reports and recommendations as presented be adopted and the motion was carried. Staff award, on the motion of Councillor Good and Councillor Bushell, it was resolved that Council award the staff member with a Level 2 Staff Incentive Award in recognition of outstanding service, and that motion was carried. Warbirds Down Under, on the motion of Councillor Irvine and Councillor Judd, it was resolved that Council support Warbirds Down Under 2022 based on the figures provided by Temora Aviation Museum and a contribution as per the report, and further that Council consult with the Temora Aviation Museum regarding potential budget overruns and models of management, and the motion was carried. Temora Caravan Park's expression of interest, on the motion of Councillor Good and the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair, it was resolved that Council advertise for expressions of interest for the lease of the Junee Road and Temora Airport caravan parks, and the motion was carried. Boundary adjustment. On the motion of Councillor Good and Councillor Oliver, it was resolved that Council fund the fencing of the subject area using quarry operations budget, and the motion was carried. Should I mention about Councillor McLaren vacating the chamber? And I also note that Councillor McLaren vacated the chamber during the entire discussion on that matter. Bush Bursary Program Participant Report. On the motion of Councillor Reinhold and Councillor Oliver, it was resolved that Council note the report, and the motion was carried. On the motion of Councillor Good and Councillor Judd, it was resolved that Council moves the motions from closed business into open council, and the motion was carried. On the motion of Councillor Oliver and the second of the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair, it was resolved that Council moves out of closed council at 8:22 p.m. and into open council, and the motion was carried. Now I need a motion, please, to formally adopt those resolutions. Councillor Bush or Councillor Good, moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. I declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. There being no further business before Council, I thank you very, very much for your attendance and for your input, and I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.